What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you tune into the channel and check out the content. And with that being said, man, I want to react to an article I just ran across with LeBron James. And in this article, LeBron James basically the article says that LeBron James explained why he left Cleveland and gave some examples of players who needed help to win rings, right? And so I'm titling this uh my reaction to that is, LeBron James gives 20 excuses for abandoning Cleveland, right? Because no matter how many examples LeBron James give and how many people he used as an example, the fact that it don't justify the fact that he left Cleveland. You know, there have been some great basketball players who have came through the history and didn't win rings, but that don't take away from their greatness, right? And so LeBron James thought that he could take a shortcut, and he thought that he could, take shortcuts and accomplish what Michael Jordan or Larry Bird and Magic Johnson and all those guys did, playing the way that they played, right? They didn't take shortcuts. They just put everything they had into winning whatever rings and whatever accolades they had. They didn't want to team up with anybody because that's not the point of professional basketball. It's not the point of competition in general. You know, you want anytime you want to divide the talent up equally, you want to have parity in an ideal situation, and then you want somebody under those conditions and circumstances to be able to separate themselves and rise to the top, like what Magic did, like what Bird did, like what Mike did. Right, those guys against the odds, they persevered and they rose to the top and they stood out. Right, they didn't take shortcuts, to win whatever rings they had. Magic had to go through Bird. Bird had to go through Magic. Kobe had to go through the teams that he had to go through to win those rings, right? And so let's look at this article that LeBron James, that it is quoting LeBron James, right? And I'm gonna go over and point to some of the teams that's on there, right? Or some of what is said by LeBron James, basically. All right, so the article says LeBron James once explained why Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson never left their original teams, right? And so now he goes on. First, it says LeBron James once explained why. Okay, why did why did Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan stay with the teams that drafted them, while LeBron James changed franchises during his prime? LeBron offered a detailed explanation rooted in NBA history. James' comments still fuel conversation about dynasties, supporting cast, and what truly wins championships. The decision stretches across decades, from Oscar Robbins to Jerry West, showing that even great players rarely reach the top alone, right? And so that statement right there, and that's true. Great players do need teammates, but even in having great teammates, you still have to have the will and the perseverance to fight through. Magic, everybody know that Magic Johnson couldn't have done it by himself. He couldn't have done it without Kareem. He couldn't have done it without James Worthy, Mike Cooper, and those guys. Everybody know that Mike couldn't have done it without Scotty. Uh, you know, um, Dennis Rodman. He couldn't have done it without Paxson and Horace Grant and those guys, right? But they did it. Larry Bird couldn't have done it without Parrish and McHale, right? Or Danny Ainge. He couldn't have accomplished what he accomplished without those guys. But that don't mean that the route that they took wasn't it was easy. Like if you watch any of those guys on their way to winning championships, like it was grueling. And so that's part of the journey, and like I said, you have some great basketball players who came through the history who didn't win rings, but who still left everything out there on the court. Karl Malone. Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing, and those are guys who I got to see, who and who were played in the era that I was watching, played in the Michael Jordan era. Those guys played with Larry Bird. They played with Magic Johnson. They just came up short. But like I said, that don't take away from their greatness. People recognize them. Who else? Dominique Wilkins, right? Those guys were great basketball players. So let's go on to, let me see what, all right. Number 19, it says perseverance. Let me see, perspective that still divide fans, right? LeBron's reasoning remained one of the conversations, but public perception has never fully changed. Many fans will still view him as a superstar who left Cleveland in pursuit of championships. Meanwhile, Jordan is often celebrated for staying in Chicago until the Bulls finally reached the top, right? So, and that's true, because the thing about that, and I always say this in videos I talk about, is that ride that Michael Jordan and all the other greats take their fan base on with them. It just it's a bond. It's like the fans feel like they're experiencing the ups and downs, the peaks and the valleys, along with that basketball player, right? Um, and so that makes your fan base that much more passionate about whoever we're talking about. We're talking about Larry Bird. We're talking about Magic Johnson. Like their fan bases are just so, that like they're just so invested in these guys, and so their fan base, it's just a different kind of passion when you put their fan base up against the LeBron James fan base, right? All right, so let me see. Let me go on to number 18. History versus legacy, right? The facts and the narratives are not always the same. LeBron argued that championship teams are built over time, while many fans continue valuing loyalty as winning, as much as winning, right? The difference that explains why this discussion about his career remains passionate to today as ever. And that's what I just said. Like the fans are passionate about that. When fans see, somebody like Dennis Rodman diving in the stands for a basketball, like they appreciate that. But if you're the kind of guy who I couldn't have got that anyway, and then you let the ball go out of bounds, yeah, and you might have been right. You might have been right. Maybe you couldn't have got it, but the fact that you went all out and you tried and you gave everything, that's what people appreciate. People who love, the sport of basketball, that's what they appreciate. All right, Jerry West, long road, right? Let me see. LeBron pointed to Jerry West as another example of perseverance. West reached the NBA Finals 9 times, but lost his first 8 appearances. Right, his championship finally came after Wilt Chamberlain joined the Lakers, reinforcing LeBron's belief that elite teammates often make the difference. Now, Jerry West he did take 9 times to get it to the championship and win, right? But people still appreciate Jerry West and what he meant to the game of basketball, even before he became a general manager, right? Jerry West, they appreciated him so much that they made Jerry West the logo of the NBA. I think that had Jerry West not won that one championship, he still probably would have been the NBA, you know what I mean, would have been the logo, and so people appreciated, they wanted, the fans wanted Jerry West to win it because of the way that Jerry West played and how Jerry West left everything out there on the court. And so I think no matter what road you take, if you put everything into it, and like I said, the fans appreciate Jerry West, and fans was rooting for him. They was happy when he won it, right? And part of the reward, like I said, was Jerry West. They made him the logo of the NBA. So I just think that Jerry West is an example of, like, everybody is an example though, that you need good teammates in order to win it, right? So all right, so let me see. not a lot of people know that Jerry West went to the finals 9 times and lost his first 8 times. He won it in his 9th time. LeBron James used West's career to show that greatness alone rarely guarantees championships. Even one of basketball's most accomplished guards needed a strong supporting cast before finally winning an NBA title. Now, LeBron James point that out. He do use Jerry West as an example, but also, if LeBron James didn't care about rings, then he wouldn't even be having this conversation, right? Because he would know that it's not all about rings, or he would feel like it's not about rings, and so he wouldn't feel the need to even have this conversation. So he can give all of these examples of people that that needed other people. Everybody needed somebody. Charles Barkley, they came up short when he was with the Phoenix Suns. Patrick Ewing came up short with the Knicks. But again, like these are two of my favorite basketball players, Charles Barkley and Patrick Ewing. I've been following Patrick Ewing since his days at Georgetown, and it's not just me. I know a lot of people who really like and admire. If you go back and you look at Charles Barkley's like his highlights, man, and how dominant Charles Barkley was, the round mound and rebound, you can't help but appreciate you can't help but appreciate what kind of player Charles Barkley was. So LeBron James using these guys as examples really don't reinforce his point. It just shows me that you have guys who still, like, even if you use Jerry West and you use Oscar Robbins, right? Oscar Robinson, you still, like, these guys still left everything out there on the court. They didn't load manage. They didn't they didn't cherry pick. They waited until basically to the ends of their careers, whereas though they went and got a ring. Same thing with like Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett, nobody can question like his passion and his effort as far as on the basketball court, right? And nobody can question Jerry West got better year after year. Oscar Robinson got better year after year. But these kind of questions still surround LeBron James because LeBron James never put himself in a position where as though he had to get better. Right. If Magic Johnson knocked Larry Bird out of the playoffs, then Larry Bird went home that whole summer and he worked on his game. And he came back and he bust Magic Johnson ass the next year. Right. And so that's what you expect from those kinds of guys. And fans appreciate that. Like Larry Bird was determined he was going to get over the hump. He wasn't going to lose every time he ran up against Magic Johnson. You know what I mean? We're going to share these accolades. We're going to share these titles. I'm going to get something, I'm going to get a piece of the action too. And same thing with Magic Johnson. Like if Larry Bird put him out of, they win a championship or lose to Larry Bird, next year he going to come back better. He's going to come back with something else added to his game. All right, so this says that, let me see, LeBron also referenced Oscar Robertson, who averaged a triple-double while dominating the league for years. Despite those remarkable numbers, Robinson did not win a championship until he teamed up with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in Milwaukee. Another example supporting LeBron's broader argument, right? And I think, and I will argue that LeBron James's argument kind of really, like, he used these guys as examples, but these guys, like I said, they persevered over time because they left everything out on the court. I've never heard anything about Oscar Robinson, Jerry West, or any of those guys back in the day, just like load managing or quitting on teams, or they stuck it out for as long as they could. All right, so I know the history of the game. Individuals get a lot of spotlight, but there's never just been one individual who has done it by himself. You can go all the way back to Oscar Robertson dominating at high school level, and he averaged a triple double. Let me see, after a season. LeBron argued that individual brilliance alone has rarely been enough to capture the NBA championship. I think that's an important statement, right? because and it's right. Individual brilliance alone. That's why Michael Jordan had to learn how to play with his teammates. You know, he had to learn how to share the ball. Kobe Bryant had the same issue, right? Kobe Bryant had to learn how to depend on his teammates in certain situations. And there's a growth and there's a maturity that comes with that. You know, like if these guys, they want to be able to do it all themselves. Will Chamberlain, you know, he right here on the screen, he had the same issue. Will Chamberlain was one of the most dominant, physically dominant basketball players that ever played. But he come to realize and found out that he could not do it by himself, right? And so he eventually, you know, he grew from the experience, that NBA experience, and he realized that he needed help too. So that's, you know, that's not the issue. Everybody need help. You know, we talking about playing a team sport, basketball, and one dominant basketball player most of the time is not going to be able to beat a good a team that's good and has chemistry, you know, and that's the whole thing. So you have to develop other skills as a dominant basketball player to go along with like your physical skills. And we saw that with Mike, we saw that with Magic, we saw that with Bird, and that's the message that LeBron James don't get. He don't get that, you know, like there was a maturation and the fan bases grew. Like Larry Bird fan base grew with him. Um, Mike fan base grew with him because as Mike learned how to play the game, fans learned also, you know, about chemistry, about sharing the ball, you know, about being the kind of player that can get your points, but you had to get your teammates involved in order to keep them motivated or get their confidence level up. LeBron James, those type of skills that Magic and Bird and Mike and Kobe developed, LeBron James didn't have to do that, right? Because LeBron James would just simply go ahead and cherry pick. So, you know, like I said, he gave 20 different examples, you know, of why, you know, he switched up and went to you know, and left Cleveland. But in my opinion, LeBron James really just don't get it. He took a shortcut. Nobody else, before he did it, you know, people wasn't trying to take these type of shortcuts, man. And rightfully so, the fans really just hold that against him because he did something that was unprecedented, and it just wasn't, you know, it wasn't the right thing to do. Whereas though fans want to see you persevere. If you wind up only winning 2 championships like Isaiah Thomas, then so be it. People still appreciate Isaiah Thomas, right? So if y'all interested, man, in this article, let me see. Where's this article? Oh, it's in Air Jordan Chronicles, and it's Ira Patel is the author of this, right? And so read the article, man, and just let me know what you think. You know, make sure to like, subscribe. Don't forget to leave a comment. And with that being said, man, I'm gonna check y'all out in the next video. Peace.